Hello folks, welcome to our canal channel Jose. Today we're going to give you an idea how we replace the rear shocks on a 2003 to 2020 Toyota 4Runner or a 2007 to 2014 Toyota FJ. And this is the rear shocks, and they don't have sides. Either shock fits left or right. And for this procedure, we have lift the truck and set the frame and jack stand so the axle falls a little bit. But we're gonna, throughout the video, we're gonna explain that you have to hold the axle for a little bit while you take out the shock so it's not hanging from the shock and it falls off. So it's not gonna fall out, but you just don't wanna get caught and by surprise. So we're gonna need a 19 millimeter or 19 millimeter wrench or an adjustable wrench and a 17 millimeter wrench for the bottom bolt. And with that said, let's jump right into it. So for us to change the rear shocks on this truck, what we have done is we have lifted it and set our truck from both sides on jack stands. We taken both wheels off the truck and we have exposed the rear suspension. And here's the shocks. Up there, we're gonna have to throw some WD-40 in those threads so we can undo that nut, locking nut that is right up there. So WD-40 on both sides. So we spray with WD-40 the driver's side and the passenger side. So now there's that 19 millimeter nut, and we can grab the cylinder with an adjustable wrench or a 19 millimeter open wrench as well. And then on the bottom, there's a 17 millimeter bolt that we need to take off on both sides. So we start with the top. And then with the open wrench, we started loosening the upper nut. And now that we have a little bit of space up there, we can put a ratcheting wrench so we can take off that nut quicker. You just loosen that nut, leave it there, don't take it off completely, because if you take it off completely, what's going to happen, the axle is going to pull down and it's going to come off of there. So it's hanging, the weight of it is hanging out of the shock, so you don't want it to come down hard. So now that we just have it there presented, a couple threads in there, we loosen this one. You can take that off completely, but leave that one in there. And once we are ready to take off that nut, what we do is we lift up the axle a little bit with a jack so we can bring it up here, give it a little bit come up, and then we can take off that nut off completely. And that way we have a controlled environment on the axle so we can work on taking off the shock now. So now let's go and take off the bottom bolt with a 17 millimeter wrench, and we can completely take it off. So now we have the jack here on the side that we're taking off the shock. So we're gonna lift the axle a little bit, and we're gonna show you what happens up there on the shock, how much it moves up, because right now the tension is pulling the shock down. So we're gonna show you that we wanna lift the axle a little bit. So as we saw, as soon as we brought up the axle, the shock came up a little bit. So that means that there's no tension, or it's not hanging on that shock anymore. The axle is actually being handled by the jack. So we can take out that nut in the upper bushing, and then we can come up here and take it off from the bottom so we can get this shock out of there and put the new one. And we're controlling the weight of this axle with the jack and not hanging from the shock now. So to take this shock out, what we have to do is we remove the upper bushing and the washer, all that. And then what we do is we grab it and we compress it down to get it out of this eyelet over here. And once we compress it, we can slide it forward from the bottom base. But first we have to compress it down. Okay, so for the bottom, it's just gonna go into the stud right here. And on the top, when you bring it out of the box, it's gonna be like this. Then you're gonna do this, undo this strap. You're gonna put this washer, this rubber piece, and then it's gonna go through the frame, right through there. And then it's gonna go this rubber piece, and then it's gonna be this washer, and then it's gonna be this nut. That's how it's gonna be. These three are from the top. Once piece of the shock has made it through that hole. So we'll show you what we mean. And this is the bottom. All it is just goes into the stud. So now we slide the shock in, we compress it, or we slide it into the bottom, and then we compress it so we can go through the top part of the frame. So what we do is we compress it all the way in, and then we slide it in. We put it on the bottom base, slide it all the way in, let it extend, and that's why we have the washer and the rubber, so it can be already in there. So the bottom one, so it goes into the frame, and then we just put the rubber on the top, and then the washer and the nut, and then we can put the hardware to tighten everything down. Now we just put the upper rubber piece, the washer, and the nut, and tighten it down. Now this is a 70 millimeter nut, so we use a 70 millimeter wrench. So as you tighten it, it's gonna get to a point where this cylinder is gonna start spinning like this. So you can just grab it by hand and then tighten it, and as soon as it stops, you're done with the upper piece of this. So for the bottom bolt that goes into the bottom base or stud, we put a little bit Loctite, blue kind, so it doesn't lose with time with vibration. So we put it on. And there is a driver's side, the upper part and the lower base. So now we can go to the passenger side and replace the other one. So now that we have put our shock in, everything is bolt on and tight, we can remove our jack from the driver's side, release the stress. So now the axle is going to hang on the shock, and then we can move our jack to the passenger side. So now we have moved the jack to the passenger side, and we don't have it too close to the shock, so the jack, it doesn't interfere with when we're taking out or in the shocks. So we have pushed the axle a little bit up, so it's not hanging on the shock. So now it's resting on the jack. So we take off the 19 millimeter nut off, and then we take off this 70 millimeter bolt off as well. Same scenario, we gotta compress the shock all the way down as much as we can so it comes out of this eyelid from the frame. And then once we compress it, we can slide it off the stud or the rod that is down here. So the shocks come with this plastic band around it, so it keeps them compressed. So once you take it off, it's gonna expand. So now that we have the washer and the rubber piece, the bushing, now we can put it on the bottom first, compress it, and then slide it into the upper frame of the truck. Now we can put the bushing on top, the washer, and then the nut. Now that we just set it and tighten that snug it by hand, we can put the bottom bolt and tighten it completely. Now that we have tightened in this completely with a lock, with some blue Loctite in it, so it doesn't come off loose with the vibrations in time, we tighten the upper nut as well. So there is the passenger side shock replaced as well. We tighten the upper nut with the both bushings and washers. We put the bottom bolt with some Loctite, tighten it. All we have to do is just remove our jack so we can put the wheels back on, and we're done with the replacement of the rear shocks on this Toyota. Well, folks, hope this video was useful and helpful how to replace the rear shocks on a 2007 to 2014 Toyota FJ or a 2003 to 2020 Toyota 4Runner. And the only thing that we did is we put a jack on the axle, as we did one side at a time, so that way the axle wouldn't fall. And we're going to leave the part number that we use in the description box. Pretty simple replacement, and you can do it at home. And just remember, once you lift the truck, set it on jack stands and lock the front wheels. That way the truck doesn't roll as you're working on this. So with that said, folks, for friends who are watching a video and haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like a video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here in the canal de Chano Jose.